Hey everybody, how's it going on this fine Sunday? It's Manzoni in the morning. Oh yeah. All right, everybody. Today we got some poetry, we got some American Carnage, and the Spokane story. This body will be a corpse. Fact. Little bit morbid, but it is a fact. How about that? All right, we got a new poem that I just wrote in response to the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings and all the madness associated with that. This is called A Huge Penis in the Sky, the biggest one ever. A huge penis, no balls, is looming over the American skyline. And now the clouds have gathered to nominate Brett, the rapist, and place him upon the highest court in all the land. Words are worth little more than sand. The giant penis, the biggest one ever, it hovers, it moves over top the Washington Monument, and thereupon mounts it till it topples. Its size is ambiguous. It changes throughout the day from blimp to blip. Out of control overcompensation going on here. I want to make that clear. Another detail I wish to share is that the huge penis is running for prez in 2024. Why not 2020? Because 2020 belongs to Trump, our half-assed, self-made king. One elected by a minority, an electoral college majority, ready to burn it all to the ground because they have or will burning themselves down, and they want to drag us down all along with them. Thanks a lot, voters. Thanks a lot, America. Thanks a lot, giant erect penis flying through the sky. The president tells us to deny our eyes. That is because he's going to try to slip it in when we're not looking. Because life is like an eternal opposite day to he. So, no means yes. So simply described, he wants to Kavanaugh you, and you will like it. You will enjoy this sloppy, assaulted horseplay. You know, other people dream of having been mountained by the Republican god dick, a totem pole to worship towards, towering, then shrinking with the cold. Do not try to be bold and fight, or else this will last all night. Oh, you must mean the rest of my life, you liar, you crook. Your flying penis is hideous. And I would prefer to set it on fire and do a dance around it, akin to mad Saturnalia Romans. Where the fuck are we going? Straight into an unknown where the only certainty is that you will be fucked by the biggest penis there ever was, depending on how you look at it and the temperature outside. Well, thank you very much. Obviously, I have a lot of strong feelings on that subject, and a lot of other people do as well. All right, let's move on to a chapter from the Spokane story, the novel that has not been published, that is on my hat, that is also a live show, that is also a bunch of music too, because one day maybe I can make it into a musical, and that would be really cool. Like Breaking Bad goes to Spokane, and then everyone's dancing and singing. Oh, it'll be very interesting, I think. Spokane story. Mission Lot, Trent Avenue, Friday, November 14th, 2014, 5 p.m. Meanwhile, the old man was working himself through a deep existential conflict. Goddamn shitter is backed up from here to doomsday. Where's that lousy kid of mine? Never around when you're looking for him. What a piece of work. He grumbled miserably, sitting down on a grimy bunk in the back. Hitler the cat mewed at him inquisitively from the kitchenette crowded with garbage. Their gazes met for a moment, after which the old man growled at the animal with mute atavism. Turning quickly to his 16-inch rectangular glass Pyrex tray rimmed with a tacky layer of brown, transparent, dried grease. He squinted his pale, beady, bloodshot eyes and picked a miniature ball of lint out of the shake-and-bake speed. Its consistency was more coagulated than crystallized. Vaguely emitting a miasma, the combination of a number of industrial solvents and the guts of lithium batteries. It was not a particularly handsome-looking batch, but it would accomplish its ends just the same for $3 a hit. The old man's phone began to vibrate on the little mounted Formica table. It buzzed, moving around in a confused arc, rebounding off the glass, expelling tintinnabulations along with it. He rinsed his hands off in the tiny sink to his left, full of dirty dishes, and dried them on his filthy camo pants. The name on the caller ID readout said that it was Skip Scarborough. The old man answered the call with joviality, most unassuming of his usual crusty demeanor. Skip, my cuz, how the fuck are you doing? Suddenly, an urgent knock came at the door, rattling the aluminum against tired hinges. This startled the old man quite intensely and caused his Alcatel Obama phone to fly, spiraling out of his hands. He was already quite on edge then to begin with. Then an accompanying innocuous voice was also heard. Someone said something harried and indistinct to another. The old man huffed and snorted derisively, deftly concealing the tray of amphetamines with an empty Judas Priest British Steel record album cover. Not that he had a working record player in his possession. Whoever it was, though, they didn't sound like cops. Hitler the cat took caution and hid in the bathroom, leaving behind a small floating trail of airborne cat hair. What the fuck do yous want? Sharply spoke the old man through the door. He then hunched behind it. The gargoyle's eyes attenuated into slits as he reached for the paper liquor store bag located under the Odyssey's passenger seat. It contained a single, loaded, .38 Smith & Wesson snub-nose revolver with a filed-off serial number and carved maple grip. Open the door, old man, said one of the voices. We need to talk to you, said the other, its tone noticeably more effeminate, higher in pitch than the other, which had a deeper growl to it. The voices seemed familiar. Maybe I'll talk to yous, retorted the baleful old meth cook, but I ain't opening the door. He pressed the barrel of the .38 against the cheap wood paneling. It creaked slightly against the increasing pressure. A visible ripple emanated from the point of contact of the pistol barrel and was seen only by the beleaguered old man's eyes. They were dilated and constricted, all at once from his combination of opiates and amphetamines. The old man bit his reptilian dry tongue and held his sulphurous breath. Sir, said the elfin effeminate voice with aplomb, you do know that you're illegally camped out here, right? You think I give a fuck? Shouted the old man, bristling with a black aura of violence. I didn't think you would really, but that's beside the point. You've been here for days. The folks over at the mission can't have it. You're going to have to vacate the premises. Now. The old man slowly put the gun in the back of his army surplus camouflage pants and violently whipped open the door to the shock of the two fellows. A short, bald white man in at least his mid-40s with a slight resemblance to a compressed walrus or perhaps a variety of mole. thick red mustache and spectacles with narrow frames that made his eyes look like tiny pale blue peas. He was draped in a purple shirt with a cowboy on a bucking bronco in front of a mountain that said, Idaho, the gem state. And underneath that, it said in loopy cartoon bubble letters, famous potatoes. The other man was about 1.5 feet taller than his companion. He was riddled with acne scars and dressed in a tattered blue and gold Puma tracksuit with a leather motorcycle jacket that said, Sober Riders, Freedom from Drugs and Alcohol. On the front, there were eagles, skulls with spiked helmets on fire, snakes biting the fire, and on the left breast, a name monogrammed in faded red, poorly sewn cursive. Patch. Patch checked a pressing push notification on his cell phone, and his face became wrought with a most dismal frown. He stuffed the phone back in the inside pocket of his jacket, gilded in studs and swaying tassels, and lit a cigarette with a silver butane Zippo in solemnity. He had been informed that a close friend of his had just gone back on the meth in the worst way. Meth perhaps bought from the old man, Amos Scarborough, or that rotten, good-for-nothing son of his, Pete. We've been watching you all day, said Idaho, while he maternally crossed his hairy arms in discontent. What of it? Asked the old man. I ain't been doing nothing illegal out here. I'm just a tired old man with his indigent son in recovery from the drugs and alcoholism, trying to survive against the odds, trying to live, trying to make it in this fucked up world. Well, said Idaho, you can go survive somewhere else. You know, we know, you're cooking and dealing meth out here. The front desk says I should call the cops on you right now for trespassing and illegal camping. But I won't if you leave quietly without too much of a fuss. That's the kind of guy I am. A nice guy, a clean guy, clean in spirit, clean in living, thanks to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The old man almost hissed, but instead withered with the thought and stepped out into the night, into the ever-increasing rain before the two malcontents. The old man smiled deviantly and uttered, Yeah, you know what I think about your clean living? No, what? The old man hawked and spit with vigor into Patch's face. Aided by methamphetamine, he instantly reeled back with serpentine recoil before they could properly react, and then he spat into Idaho's face. Patch howled unintelligibly as he wiped the spittle off his upper cheek with the back of his left hand. He stared vacantly at it for a microsecond and said, "You grimy motherfucker! What's wrong with you?" howled Idaho, aghast and crestfallen. "What's this freaking world coming to?" They began their advance on the old man. Patch cracked his knuckles. The elder Scarborough thence drew his firearm and laughed heartily as they were thereupon frozen in their tracks. From deep within the old man's internal core came a diaphragmatic sound reminiscent of sick, wheezing bellows. "You're not gonna fucking shoot us, are you?" inquired Patch. "Oh, I don't know," said the old man. "Guess we'll have to see how she turns out, won't we?" The old man then paused and casually checked the gun to make sure it was actually loaded. He had some wildly uncomfortable experiences with that in the past, believe you me. To the old man's horrified chagrin, all 6 bullets, flattened tips indicative of hollow point rounds, slid out of their chambers and hopelessly scattered to the ground. The old man had put Pete in charge of oiling the gun quite recently. This is what happens, you see. He did what some parents do, which is tell their kid to do something with little to no explanation, then get all pissed off when they ask how to do it, saying, "You should know how to do this already," and still not providing an adequate explanation. This is how we get to situations like this. If only the old man had a little bit more patience. Yeah, as if. "Ah, shit on a fucking shingle," exclaimed the old man, jaw hanging open idiotically. I don't suppose we can sit down and calmly talk about all this. No, replied Patch, grinning contemptuously. I think we're way past that, buddy. No, I think it's time for a good old-fashioned mountain ass kicking. And you know what? That is exactly what happened. All right, that's from the Spokane story. All right, now we'll get to some poetry. Let's do a new poem. Well, not a new poem, but another poem. Let's do a poem that'll be new to you because I don't think I ever recorded this or performed it live. This is called Manzoni's Basement Number 1, Bath Salts, based on a true story. How about that? I remember back in 2009, way back when, in another time and place, an altogether different and felonious headspace. I ordered 1 gram-o of what later came to be known as the zombie drug, bath salts. MDPV. Not good for you, nor me, nor anyone else. If you're not going to listen to try it yourself, well, welcome to hell. I do hope you enjoy your stay, however short as you twist and grimace and contort your limbs and pick at your skin, because there are bugs underneath. Not insects, but listening devices. The cops will stop at nothing to intercept your vices. 4 to 5 days of pure madness. It should have only been 1 day, and yet once the high comes, it's never going to stop. Till the drugs run out, or the heart gives way to attack, or brain stroke circulatory overload, or the real cops come to kill and harvest souls, severed heads dangling from 18-foot-long poles. There are many roles in life one could take upon instead of this. Gibbering bath salt, zombie psychotic, shooting up gray and brown, Chinese death distillate. Bought off the web, the internet, before the dark net cometh, with its dubious bitcoins and beyond shady, shifty, money-gram overseas dealings. Watch your friends as they convulse and die before you, then realize they were never there in the first place. A malevolently hallucinatory journey marathon to the very end of the mind's other eye. The one that should remain covert ops, black ops, fiber optics, laser sight, shadow, strike team cometh. I defend my mother's house, now lost to time and circumstance, against the onslaught, while she repeatedly tells me that she'll have me locked back up as a danger to myself and others. Which I was. But at the time, the grip on my own mind kept me about as blind to reality as an overdosing addict can get. Blood moon, bloody arms, missed veins with dull needles. Though the hit was enough to send me over the edge, send me running through the farmer's fields, clutching my black backpack full of drugs and associated accessories. Running from the invisible police, running from the dogs and the DEA, the ATF, and my probation officer, all ghosts, all incorporeal, all tormented manifestations of stimulant-induced madness, chaos, people, friends appearing and disappearing before me, cell phone screens aglow with LCDs, the one that did show on day 3, a friend of mine, I accuse of being an undercover cop, a former co-worker. Sorry, Matt. It mattered not to me that the drugs I had at the time were technically legal. Not anymore. Good. Research chemicals, spice, Flocka. It's all the same imported death and utter psychological annihilation waiting to happen. You're better off not trying any of them. Because after the bath salt run, don't you know, I was pissing blood. And thought that I was going to die anyway. To the only drugs I ever flushed down the toilet, I say, goodbye. Don't do bath salts, MVPV. Don't do bath salts, MVPV. Don't do bath salts. Don't do them. That was my warning to you. And if you do them after I told you about this, you're in for a friggin' fucked up ride, and hopefully you get back in one piece, because it was worse than fucking meth. I mean, meth took me a few days before I started going crazy. I'd say around day 2 and a half, like the second day. But like the MDPV, I hadn't even, it was like after one day I started hallucinating. And then even when I got sleep, it was like I hadn't slept, and it just continued with the hallucinations getting worse until I became convinced that the strike team had entered the house and they had a rifle pointed at me with the laser sight. And my mother, sorry, Mom, sorry. She just was like, there's nobody there. There is nobody there. But I was like, there's somebody there. There's someone there. They're going to kill us. That's what happens when you do drugs. You know, I thought it was cool because it was a drug that was technically legal, very cheap, and wouldn't show up on my drug test because, you know, I was on probation for a very long time. And so that's why people are doing spice. That's why they're doing Flocka, you know. I mean, it's either because it's really cheap or because they can't do the drugs they want to do. And they end up doing horrible drugs. You know, if I just had the legal weed like I do out here, it would have been a lot different because I wouldn't have to go through all kinds of fucking bullshit to get the goddamn weed. The same amount of bullshit I would have to do to get, you know, worse drugs. And then just like out of convenience, look at something on the internet and be like, oh, okay, this is a drug I can do. I should order a lot of this. And then I did, and I totally fucking regretted it. So I hope that my story leads someone out there who is thinking about doing these kinds of hard drugs to just stop in their tracks and be like, shit. It's a good thing I didn't do that. I hope. I'm going to do another poem. Why I keep saying that. This will be my heart sings glad tidings to nowhere. My heart sings glad tidings to nowhere. I am caught between breath and death. The vise, it tightens and strengthens its cold mechanical grip. Chest compressed. An attempt is made to unscrew into another place. A safer place for the mind and body to remain and revive. And yet still I am dying on the vine with life cast aside in 2 trade winds, blowing in all different directions at once. Mind obsessed, driven to linger upon ephemeral moments of intuitive misdirection. There is only so much that we can change in this world. And it be not the past, for we are not Tacitus and the rest of his historian imperial Roman ilk. We must look to the future as well as the present moment in which we stand now. Follow the good that is within you and speaks to your soul. Fall not into the hole of the void and the dark God that reigns inside. Far and wide be the annihilative wrath of its measure and scope of ubiquitous dictatorial control. Follow the good far away from the void, from the whole, always hungry for more chaos. More violence, calamitous carnality, atrocities upon the self and to others, the darkest fire it burns inside. The fire catches and thrives on the dry kindling, constitution weakening within depression, taking hold again. When will the madness all stop? Silence, the pin drops. I hear it strike the floor. But it seems so far away. Just where am I today? Somewhere safe, 3 stories up in the sky, looking over the neighborhood, shoveling snow over ledge while white clumps cling to my clothes and curls. I am still trying to understand this world. And until that goal is fully realized, my heavy heart sings its glad tidings to nowhere. Breathing the air of life, leaning ever so far away from the grasping clutches of evil and death, I take one final breath and step inside. That's a poem I wrote last year about my depression. And, well, it's about that time of year again where it's starting to begin again. Because I kind of, my bipolar disorder acts on like a seasonal cycle where like summertime is more hypomania and then winter is depression. And it gets to its worst point around January, February. So I got to get as much done as I can before that time this year. Although I did get a lot of writing done during that period. It's just a lot harder, and it just feels like I'm wading in waist deep in like a marsh, and there's crabs all over the place. They're eating dead fish, and I'm just wading through, just trying to get to the other side, and it just keeps getting deeper and deeper. No escape. Well, there is an escape. It's easier to know now that I know that when I am depressed, that it will end. And years ago, like as a teenager, I would get into these states where I would feel like I would going to be depressed forever. And that would lead to some really bad modes of thought, which led to, drug abuse, bad decision making, going back to the hospital, that kind of stuff. So it's important that if you're feeling depressed, you should get treatment for it. And then if you feel like the whole world's spiraling out of control around you, you definitely should ask for help. And I think that's been a big problem of mine, is that I don't like asking for help until the shit hits the fan, and then boom, and then I would be like, well, I wish I took care of this earlier, and then it wouldn't have grown into such a explosive end. Just really let some of that stuff go. Now let's go to some American Carnage. This is chapter 9 of American Carnage. Marty, the white bread serial killer. U.S. Route 40, Malaga, New Jersey, Republican States of America. Friday, January 18th, 2092, 8:11 Eastern Standard Time. Marty drove his lead-lined covered pickup truck north towards Philadelphia. He was searching for a new victim for his choice little parlor games. This new world created the perfect environment to foster murderous sociopaths, craving ultra-violence and gratuitously brutal satisfaction. They trawled the cities, lone wolves starving, hungry for fresh blood and viscera. Their crimes were, by and large, blamed on ignorance, sons and daughters of immigrants and relatives, which was most unfortunate for them, though very fortunate for this new breed of white-on-white killers. How many people had Marty killed up to that point? Too many. Way too many. In a world covered in cameras and microphone bugs, still people slipped under the radar. People like Marty Mega Longfellow, a great name for a man with such a minuscule micropenis, among the myriad of others like him, a steadfast collection of wannabe Ted Bundys and Gary Gilmores, for a new Republican America. His alibi was ingenious. Using information obtained from the wire, Marty modified a 3D printer to create a replica of his own face and torso. Then he physically copied his retinal print to a discarded set of robot eyes procured from his local recycling center. Then all he had to do was set up his government-issued tablet on a table in his den, making sure to prop it up with a decidedly flimsy plastic stand. For all the government knew, Marty was there, in his home, the whole time. Now, if he were stopped by the police or drew any suspicions at one of hundreds of military checkpoints in the area, and they found out he didn't have his tablet, he would have been totally screwed. Luckily, he was white. Very white. So white that he was always cheerfully waved through with a "how do you do," while 2 yards away, the other military police ripped apart some poor old woman's 6-door sedan with saws and crowbars, with the German Shepherd Dobie mixes snapping violently at her while she recoiled handcuffed on the curb in abject fear and horror, exposed to the omnipresent virulent radiation. Her clothes torn to shreds and covered with bloody paw prints. Marty smiled briefly as he moved through the latest checkpoint, then proceeded to frown dismally. It was becoming increasingly difficult to avoid the watchful eye of Securitas while conducting his aforementioned games upon the white female public. There weren't a whole lot of folks strolling about the roadways anymore. People had gotten wise to them. The short cons, the long ones, medium ones too. 10 miles down the road, Marty began ironically whistling, "Can I get a witness?" as he flipped on his left blinker and pulled off into a ramshackle pay-by-the-hour roadside motel called the Easy D. He'd scooped up a prostitute there before. She was hard on her luck, and he needed someone to bring her to Camden, New Jersey, to score more ecstasy and crocodile fixins. Perhaps needless to say, she never made it to the city, much like most of the others. He rolled around the parking lot, slowly, accurately inspecting every nook, cranny, and crevice for the whereabouts of his next prospective victim. To his chagrin, there was no one to be found. No defenseless women, anyway. In all honesty, Marty didn't have the balls to attack a man. Pathetic. If you talked to his mother, she would tell you her son was the nicest, most kind, responsible child on the face of the planet. You know whose mother also couldn't say enough great things about him? John Wayne Gacy. Feeling like he was wasting too much time, Marty decided to cut his losses and did a K-turn in the icy parking lot. He drove back onto Route 40, cutting off an automated hazmat 18-wheeler, nearly causing a serious accident. He continued north, finally to Camden, Walt Whitman's old haunt, the last stop before Philly. There was a sizable bus terminal there. It was filled to the brim with desperate people, mostly, as our president would call them, the blacks. But there were a few whiteys tucked away here and there if one took the time to look. The problem was that it occurred to Marty that he may not have let enough time elapse since the last time he had forcefully abducted a white woman from that particular terminal. It had only been 2 weeks. He didn't want to make it a habit to keep returning there over and over. After all, that was how idiots get caught. The thing was, though, that his bloodlust had reached frenzied levels. The addiction to violence was too strong, and it was too easy to coax someone into his vehicle with the promise of a free ride somewhere. "Oh, you're in luck," he would say. "I'm actually going that way right now. Isn't that something? Sure, I'll help you out, ma'am." His charm and altogether geeky appearance and demeanor was disarming. He seemed just so nice at first, but that's what they all said. Of course, I would like to take this chance to point out that they're all dead now. Marty came off of 295 and into Camden, down MLK Boulevard, passing the hospital on his left. He made a right onto Broadway, initially past the Mike Pence Memorial Bus Terminal, formerly known as Walter Rand. People dressed from head to toe in radiation suits scurried from the light rail stop across the street. They hurried to their jobs, to their beleaguered lives, dressed in lead, some fashionably, some otherwise, looking mostly like second-rate road warrior extras. And just where the hell was Mel Gibson when we needed him? Dead. One could easily tell who the poor were. They were the ones who weren't wearing those heavy suits. They were exposed to the radioactive elements, and their appearances reflected that. Marty had taken to wearing wigs to cover their many had taken to wearing wigs to cover their exposed scalps. Huge goggles to protect their eyes. Those who had forgotten their goggles too many times were either blind or going blind. The strange Ruski particles of they were not the usual sort of radioactive element. They were something altogether more sinister than the usual plutonium-2,420 used in modern American nuclear weaponry. It was called plutonium, in honor of the infamous off-shirtless, horseback-riding ex-KGB presidential calendar boy, Vladimir Putin. Marty traveled a full city block before making a right onto Federal Street. He went down another 2 blocks and pulled into the parking lot of a Taco Tuesday. In the alleyway, a crowd of a dozen or so gutter urchins were hungrily digging through the dumpster with their bare hands. One of them, a black man, was wearing an exceedingly tall, Abe Lincoln levels of tall, purple felt top hat. Even Marty thought that was odd. In their midst, though, did Marty spot the chalky pallor and pink pajama pants of a white woman. With a spurious calmness, he then puffed on a robot cock vape cigarette plugged into the dash. As the interior filled with a sickly smelling birthday cake flavored smoke, Marty released a plume, grinning reminiscently of Rick Moranis and the granddaddy of Canadian sketch standard Second City TV. He momentarily observed them, the indigents feasting on wet trash, while he sat there biding his time with the engine running. Animals, he said to himself, every single one of them. He imagined himself running across America on top of a gigantic riding lawnmower, chopping up street people and white women left and right, going through the project ghettos and leaving behind nothing in his wake but dust and a wavering light crimson mist. It was at this exact moment that the bomb went off inside the Mike Pence Memorial Bus Terminal. Thank you. That was American Carnage. And that's just had to find some humor in serial killing, a terrible subject, but I'm just like trying to think of how serial killers will manipulate the totalitarian bureaucracy of the future, and just like the administrations to just just go with it and create monsters that we never even imagined. And it's terrifying. What's terrifying about American Carnage is that it's a path that I believe that we as a nation are heading towards. And we're already in a half-assed 1984 kind of a dystopian future mixed with fucking Mike Pence's idiocracy. And it's funny to write about, but not so funny to live, which is why I have to write all this shit. I have to write this stuff to, it's like a form of therapy to deal with these subjects and to just try to make sense of them in my mind. So a lot of times when I'm writing American Carnage, I get up in the morning and I see a news story or just something like that, and I just kind of see how that would play out in the future with the characters in question. And it's fun, but it's also terrifying and sad and all the rest. So I mix everything up. I do a little bit of each thing. I do a poem maybe one day, and then another day I'll do a little bit of writing the novel, and then another day I'll do my graphics and my cartoon characters for these images for the show, and then I'll work on the show. A lot of different stuff. But I'm just going to keep working on all that. New Manzoni in the morning is coming to rock your faces, okay? It just needs a little bit more editing. I want to make it as good as I can make it before I unleash it upon reality. This has been Alexander A. Manzoni with Manzoni in the Morning, signing off. Thank you. Don't get killed tonight. Don't get in any trouble. Stay off the hard shit. And just don't let the politics mess with your brains, because it'll drive you crazy. All right. Have a good day.